Okay, you guys are troopers for staying so late. Goodness. Well, my name is Kamal Bhandal. I'm with the Invisalign brand. Thank you so much for being here. Who here has heard of the Invisalign brand? Amazing. So the talk here is really going to be about why that's the case. 12 years ago, I've been with this brand 12 plus years. Who does that? But let's talk about why that's the case, right? The goal of today is for this to be super conversational. I promise I won't keep you guys too late, but what a really interesting story, particularly as I think about the seat that you guys are sitting in. The theme here is adapt or die. And what an amazing theme, right? Now, this can be scary for sure, but it's also an invitation for all of us, an invitation for us to reinvent who we are, how we go to market, and this isn't new, right? This is the ethos of who we are as an industry. This is what brands do, is we've got to figure out how do we adapt or we're dead. And all of you are included along with that as I think about us as brands. And so when you think about the Invisalign brand, right? At the end of the day, the Invisalign brand as we know it today is not the brand that it was 12 years ago, okay? And a big part of this story is how we got there, and not alone. My philosophy is that teams win, period, full stop, right? There's no other color around that. Teams win, period. And why is that? It's that way because no one does it alone. And included in our teams are our agency partners, okay? So there's 3 key agency partners that I want to call out. Those agency partners, and this clicker is going to be my friend in just a second. Those 3 agency partners are the following 3 that you see here. Smarty Social, Publicis Group, in particular, the Starcom agency, as well as MSL, Influential, and a few others, and then also Team 11. Why do I call this out and what's so interesting about this? Well, 2 of these 3, Smarty Social and Team 11, were with Invisalign before I was, right? So that doesn't happen. I mean, think about it. They've been with the brand for 15 years. So why would that be the case? Multiple leaders, myself included, multiple leaders before me, and then they've been able to survive. The interesting thing about the Starcom group as a part of Publicis and Influential and others is our relationship with Starcom and Publicis started in the pandemic. So they too had to overcome and establish relationships and be an integral partner for me, right? So with that, let's rewind and let's go through this story. Basically, when I got to the Invisalign brand 12 years ago, what we realized was that we had a big problem, right? We had a big problem. And that problem was that our brand was invisible. It really is invisible, right? You can't tell one clear aligner from the other. You can't tell when somebody's wearing a clear aligner, right? You can't tell when they're wearing Invisalign. So we went out and we said, we did what good brand marketers and agency partners do. We said, let's talk to the people who use our product. What do they say? And what we found, and we've got a few key audiences that we speak to, right? Adults. Adults love the product, but they wouldn't take my money if I paid them to talk about it. And I tried, right? I really tried. I said, no, hang on a second. You just finished telling me that you love this product. I'm going to pay you to talk about it, the early days of creator marketing, but they wouldn't do it, right? Because it wasn't something that they wanted to talk about. It wasn't a brand that was a core part of their life. Now, the other part of our audience is moms, because in addition to creating the need with adults, we also are a substitute for braces. Who's the key decision maker? Moms are the key decision maker. What moms would say, and these are moms of current users, right? These are adults who use the product, moms who use the product. They would say, oh my gosh, I love this. I wish I knew that Invisalign worked just as effectively as braces beforehand. It's better oral health. It's fewer emergency appointments and less painful for the kids. Sign me up, right? What did teens say? Teens said, I love Invisalign, right? But I just want to fit in. No one my age has Invisalign, right? And then last but not least, let's think about the last constituent for us, the last stakeholder we have to win over. Because in our business, we are not a consumer business. We are not a DTC brand. We are a healthcare brand, right? So we sell our product through the experts, through the dentists and the orthodontists. What would they say? Well, guess what? They loved it too, right? They still love it. They say, yeah, I offer Invisalign. Why? Because my peers helped design Invisalign, right? It's designed with doctors, with experts. We don't do it ourselves. It's backed by science. It helps me grow my business, right? And guess what? It gives me the outcome that I'm looking for. So it has all these benefits. But oh, by the way, I only recommend it when my patients ask for it, right? So you put all these things together and you say, hey, what's the problem here, right? You've got this amazing product. Every single person that you need to convince loves it, but nobody wants to talk about it. And that's because we were not cool. We were not a lifestyle brand. We were very much this orthodontic dental brand, right? So what did we do? We said, okay, what are our strengths? We switched from being campaign marketers. We need to launch a new campaign. Come on, let's go. We need more volume. Let's launch a new campaign. We said, that's not working, right? We switched and we said, we have to build systems that work. A core part of those systems is the strength that we have of designing with doctors, right? Why is that a strength? Well, it's backed by science, so adults love it. Parents love it too, right? You're not going to put anything in your child's mouth that's not proven or designed by a doctor, or at least many people don't do that. And then the second thing we said is that it has to be chosen by communities, right? You've got to be able to have that social proof in place so that the teenager doesn't feel like they're the only one. Adults don't feel like they're the only one, right? And then last but not least, what you have to do is you have to move at the speed of culture. This last point is a really important one, right? And you'll see, hopefully in the marketplace with us today, you see us moving in the speed of culture, but this took time to build, and this had to be a system and a muscle that we built with our agency partners together, right? So for doctors, what did we do? Doctors had to see themselves in the work because they need to influence each other as well to recommend. Moms and adults love seeing doctors in the work because it gives them the social proof, and guess what? They're the doctors who are in their local communities, right? We are a very local brand. And then for the consumer, that social proof was key to see, my doctor in Silicon Valley, California, who is actually talking about all the ways in which she is designing smiles in her practice and elevating confidence. But of course, that's not enough. Moving at the speed of culture meant integrating into culture. Right? And integrating into culture means you've got to make sure that you are relevant into the things that your consumers, your buyers are really involved with, right? So for us, it's multifactorial because our audiences are multifactorial, right? There was somebody who was talking about different generations earlier today. We have to be relevant for teens. Any brand that is trying to win over teens knows that you have to move at the speed of culture. You have to talk their talk. So we invited teens in to co-create with us, right? We've got a teen advisory board who helps us stay on the pulse of culture for teenagers. And I always say that we've got to use the word teenager or tweenager because they are both very, very different. Women's sports, right? Athletes love us. Why? Because in the same way that you are thinking about the alignment of your hips, your knees, and your toes, you've got to think about the alignment of your jaw, right? Not to mention all the emergency appointments, and last week's Chick-fil-A doesn't need to be hanging out in there anymore, as happens with braces. Fashion. Who saw the shout out from Pharrell at the Met Gala, right? A couple of hands pop up. Being a part of culture means getting a lot of shout outs like that. But this took time. This took time, and it didn't happen overnight, but it was building these adaptive systems that really drove us to where we are today. And last but not least, one of the other things that I wanted to call out, right? It's not just campaign work. It's also innovating as a part of that systematic approach of building a living organism. It requires changing the way that you go to market, right? Gone are the days where you have separate organizations between the idea, production, media, and talent, all living in separate areas, but really innovating together. And this is what our agency partners really helped us do, right? They are a core part of my team. We co-create together. I cannot say that word enough. It is definitely a buzzword, but it is the best word that I could think about in terms of how to represent what that relationship looks like. Okay, so what can you do, right? How do you, sitting in your seat, break through some of these challenges that you might be facing today? It always starts with the inside. But from there, right, when you think about it, there's a few key things that you want to make sure are a core part of the way that you behave, right? The way that you connect with your agency partners. I'm not going to read all of these, but I think the key thing for you all to take away is, I go to events now with our doctors. Think about it. We host events all over the country, all over the world. These are my customers. You can't tell who's an agency partner and who works for Align because they all work for Invisalign, right? They show up and they say, hi, my name is Margarita and I am with the Invisalign brand, right? They cannot tell, and our customers cannot tell. They love it. They love it. They absolutely know that they are agency partners, but you wouldn't be able to tell because they know our business inside and out, right? As we look ahead, right? The theme here is adapt or die. As we look ahead, we are also evolving, right? We are evolving in such a way as a healthcare company that we want to give everybody in this room, everybody around the world, oral health diagnostics. Diagnostics that help you understand your tooth health, your gum health, right? The alignment of your bite. This is built into our digital scanner. Nobody else has this. As you think about all the metabolic data that we think about our cardiovascular health, we think about our muscle health, we think about our gut health, right? 5 years ago, nobody was talking about gut health. Oral health is where overall systemic health really stems from. And you really don't want last week's Chick-fil-A still hanging out in your mouth. But that's not it, right? We'll see if there's a video in here. I thought it might be fun to share a video with you guys. It looks like it's not in here, but that's okay. We also have new technology that helps you really see what your new smile will look like before you actually do Invisalign, right? Because seeing is believing, and that's what we're used to in our day-to-day. But that's not it. In addition to actually continuing to evolve, continuing to adapt to ensure that we don't die, we also have Invisalign for kids. So there's continuous innovation here so that we can bring all of these benefits to the table. Bringing it home, a couple of things that I want to leave you with, 5 key points. How did those agencies survive? Many marketing leaders, some of which who have been on the business 15 years. That is unheard of. One who actually started during COVID and is still here and thriving, right? First and foremost, understand the business, not campaigns. When you show up at the table, they are here to try to figure out, how do I drive volume growth? My job is to drive top line and bottom line growth, but guess what? It's not just my job. It's everybody's job around that table. The second piece is you've got to experience the customer's perspective, right? They know this business inside and out better than I did, that's for sure. And that takes, some acknowledgement on the brand team's part to spot that and to say, hey, I don't know everything. But really understand the brand from all customers' perspective, not just the one that you like. Very important. Learn from other people. Seems obvious, but the part in parentheses is really important. Learn from other agencies who are on the business, right? Yes, they're your competition as well, but they will help make you successful, and these 3 agencies figured that out. Relevancy does require moving at the speed of culture. Brands who move at the speed of culture, agency partners who move with them at the speed of culture, are partners who win. They're businesses who win. That Pharrell moment, by the way, that was not manufactured. Little secret, right? That was in the moment. I'm at a dinner in Toronto. My agency team texts me and says, "You're never going to believe what just happened." Then they said, "And we have a plan. We want to pitch this and get the media flow going. Are we good?" What do you do in that moment? There's only one option. You say, "Yeah, go," right? There's no time for, all the cycles that you normally would have. And then the last piece here, right? The future of strategy isn't about deliverables. And this is one of the things I think that you really, really have to embrace. It's not about what's my task list, what do we have to deliver at what time, right? It's not about the project. It's about getting into the business. What does the business need? Where are my points of failure? Where are my points of delight? Where do we win? And what gets in the way of that revenue, right? You walk in and you ask for Invisalign for your teenager, and you've got a doctor who says, "Yeah, Invisalign works for teens, just not your teen." Okay, that's a failure point. We got to figure out why that's happening, right? Because otherwise we can do everything that we want at the top of the house, but the bottom line is not going to come through, right? And the last point here, right, is so important, and it goes back to the top of where I started. You've got to become the part of the operating system of the team, right? I don't go to events. I send my agency partners because they're a part of my team. They're my call in the middle of the day or the text in the middle of the day. That's when I say, "Hey, I've got an issue. I need some help thinking through this," right? I'm not sending over a brief. I'm saying, "Do you have half an hour to get on the phone with me because I need to talk through this and I need somebody else's brain on it to help me problem solve," right? So with that, as we think about the next era for the Invisalign brand, certainly we've got 20 million smiles and counting. When I started, we were less than 3, but certainly 20 million smiles, 20 million stories, and we're so excited about the endless possibilities. I know I went through that really fast, but we're going to pivot real quick and invite Elizabeth Paul up to the stage for a quick talk. Yeah.
All right, is my mic working? There we go. I'm a mom of 3 teenagers.
Amazing.
And 2 of them had like old school, face full of metal power band braces. But now I think my little guy is going to get Invisalign. I thought they were just for adults. Is that one of your problems to
This is one of our challenges.
Yeah.
This is one of our challenges, right? It's like we've got to really break this heritage. This is our heritage. We started as an adult brand, right? So people who are moms today remember us from that time, right? When we first came out. But the reality is we work for teenagers. We work for kids as young as 6 as well. And there's a lot of benefits that come along with it. Braces work just fine. They work really well. And that's why they've been around for a long time. At the same time, there's another product in town that has some benefits too that should be checked out.
All right, I think you sold me. You talked about a strategic wake-up call. And I was curious, obviously you had a lot of love and you had, growth. You're really a category creator. Often when business is going well enough, organizations don't disrupt themselves. So I'm curious, when you had that strategic moment, was it born of necessity or were you disrupting yourself?
We were disrupting ourselves. We think of ourselves as a growth company, but we knew that in order to unlock that growth, there was a problem. We just didn't know what the problem was, right? And in order to unlock that growth, you spend a lot of time talking to people who don't use your product, which is really important. We also went and spent a lot of time talking to the people who did choose us to figure out what did they love, what did they hate too, right? So that we could really drive that improvement. And that's what unlocked a lot of those quotes that I shared earlier.
I love that. You talked about how much work you had to do internally to play in culture, and I love two things about that. One, I think healthcare marketing is going through a really interesting moment because traditionally it was very rational, it was much more didactic, persuasion. And I know, like at Cannes this year, the number of brands that were not in the categories you would traditionally think have permission to do sexy marketing, that whether insurance companies, healthcare companies, that we're playing in culture, it seems like it's a bigger and bigger space to play. What kind of work did you have to do internally to set your organization up to say yes to that kind of ideation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first and foremost, there's some things you do. You say, okay, here are my objectives. Here's what I'm going to do. And then there's some things you don't ask permission for, right? In terms of the how. I'll give you guys a great example. Teenagers in particular, right? Our company is a growth company, growth mindset. Our CEO, fantastic. He was with me every step of the way and said, okay, we need to unlock growth with teenagers. You figure it out. You figure it out. So I called people who knew teens because we didn't. So I called YouTube and I said, so, hey, here's the thing. I need some help. So borrowing credibility from people who already have equity in the space helped quite a bit.
I love that. So you also talked about ecosystems. Obviously, that's a through line in this. We at my agency sometimes talk about brand worlds, which I think is probably a different way into the same thought. What do you consider to be the parts of your ecosystem? Sometimes a brand world, you think about distinctive brand assets or existing equities. What are the levers that live within that ecosystem for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think first and foremost, I'll say people. Yeah. People are a core part of that lever. And by people, it is the people who use our product, right? And that's both the end user, but it's also the doctors, the orthodontists and the dentists who are transforming smiles, changing lives in their communities. They are often the first ones that we hear from. And we are very gifted in that we have a very close connection with them. We get a lot of time from them. They call us, they know us by name, and they'll say, you're never going to believe what happened, right? And I'll give you a good example that helps bring this to life. Why are we in sports, right? People always say, why are you invested in sports, right? And I say, well, actually, I'm not. What I'm invested in is the end user, right? And what we heard first and foremost, and this is texts coming in with doctors saying, you're never going to believe what I'm seeing. What's that? Well, crazy thing is happening. All these athletes want Invisalign all of a sudden, these kids. Why is that? Tell me more. Well, Jane was playing soccer and took an elbow and got pulled out of the game because Jane had braces. And we went, that's interesting, right? So a core part of those systems is the doctors in our network because they're the ones, there is live market research happening day in and day out. So we often don't do traditional market research. Yeah. I'll go sit in a practice for a day and understand, listen to conversations. What's happening? How does the practice staff actually present the product, right? Is that my point of failure? And it's of course not me doing this, right? The whole point of all of this conversation is that our agency partners are a core part of it. But of course there's the typical things of the product itself, really elevating and educating consumers on how to tell the real Invisalign, which you can tell using the Invisalign Star Flower. If your product does not have the Invisalign Star Flower, it's not Invisalign.
It's Temu Invisalign. Like if it does not have the star flower.
It's an ordinary aligner.
I love the thought that market research is not something that you go and do in a point in time, but is like this ongoing ecosystem and feedback loop. How often are your agency partners or your team like on those front lines having those conversations?
Every day.
I love that.
Every day. We just had a large doctor event a couple of weeks ago. My agency team is in the room interviewing doctors. I'm not even there. Yeah. They know them by name. The doctors are sending my agency teams the thank yous of all the content that's been shot. I haven't even gotten those by the time the agency team sends it to me because they send it directly. So the agency team is on the direct line, right? Or they're the forefront. Now, you've got to ensure that you can carry yourself in front of a customer. So let's be clear about that, right? But we do make it a core part of our onboarding, where when junior team members, somebody new at the agency starts, we put them in there, not by themselves, but they have to understand and learn that culture. So if you show up in a like, well, here's my brief, and let me ask you a couple questions, and you don't know anything about how their business works, that's not going to work really well.
Yeah.
Right?
I love what you said about considering your agency partners part of the team. Obviously, I'm a little biased being an agency person myself. But in one of the strategic breakouts, System 1 showed some data that basically linked the longevity of agency relationships to success in the marketplace, which is pretty countercultural right now. There was a CMO we worked with recently who, when she joined, she told us that her last company, the playbook was you fire the agency on day one. If you're a new CMO, you fire the agency on day one, which is a lovely thing to hear from your prospective new partner. But you did something really countercultural. Like, not only did you not fire the agency on day one, because to your point, often agencies are the inheritors of internal organizational churn and other parts of the organization that advertising can't always address. What made you make that decision to kind of dance with the one who brung you, so to speak, versus starting net new?
I mean, first and foremost, they knew the business, right? The people at the table, and it wasn't everybody, to be clear, right? It wasn't everybody on the team, but there were a few core people. The CEOs of both of those companies, they know my business, and they knew it, and that was apparent. How was that apparent to me? They knew the data. They knew the customers' names. They knew how the customer's story had changed, right? Because these are small business owners at the end of the day, right? Yeah. They're not these, it's not this big retail client. Yeah. For example, this is Dr. Juan, right? This is Dr. Jenny, who is running a practice in Leeds or in New York City, right? And they knew these customers by name. They knew how they functioned, where if they were in debt, or if their daughter Jane was experiencing an issue, right? So the depths showed really, really fast. And I think that carrying that ethos through and through, and also sticking with us, quite honestly, right? Like when we went through rough times, because we went through changes. We've gone through changes, as every company does. And I think weathering that storm with us and saying, hey, let me fly in and figure out how we can make this work, right? And that says a lot too. And I think this last point can't be underscored enough, is when I was having challenges with the business was going through a cycle or whatever, right? People got on planes and came to me, right? And showed up and came to me. And that doesn't mean every time. That's not what I'm saying. But showcasing, hey, this is important. And I'll help you figure this out. Or saying, hey, I can't talk right now, but let's pick up the phone at this time and let's hash it out. Let me help you think through it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there was a quote earlier in the day, the old Bill Bernbach quote that, it's very fashionable to talk about what's changing, and it's actually what doesn't change that, typically is the most important thing to pay attention to. Some of those small things for partnership, like having people who love your business, pay attention, show up when it's hard. I think some of that has been lost in the industry in recent years, because in the era of AORs, you had people who were thinking about your business when you weren't. And I think as a lot of agencies have been treated maybe more like contractors that are a little more disposable, it's harder to find people who are thinking about open briefs and stuff like that when it's not in the scope.
Well, and I think to that point, I mean, one other example that I'll give, right? Let me give a more recent example of Sarah from my Starcom team, right? As our business was going through cycles, I said, hey, I can't do business like the way that we were doing business, right? I was like, here's what I need. Can you help me figure it out? We changed the way that we go to market, right? We changed the way, and she's the one who brought it to me. She's like, I have an idea. Okay, love that opener. And I think what it requires is that it requires you both to hold hands and acknowledge that it may not work, right? And that took a lot of selling internally to say, actually, we're going to go brief a media partner who's emerging, who's new. Disney was the one in that example, not new, but there were others, where we said, this is what we need. We need this approach. It's got to have creators in it who use the product. It's got to have production included. It's got to have a product placement. And we figured it out.
Amazing. Well, thank you. That was a great story and I think inspiring for everyone. Appreciate you being here.
Go have